There's a certain kind of person who goes quiet when the argument gets loud. Not because they have nothing to say, not because they've lost, but because somewhere along the way, they learned that silence can hold more power than a raised voice ever could. Maybe you've mistaken this for weakness. Maybe you've watched someone go still in the middle of a fight and assumed they'd checked out, given up, stopped caring. Maybe you've been this person yourself, and afterward, alone, you wondered if something was wrong with you for not screaming back. Here's what most people get backwards. Silence in an argument isn't surrender. It's often the most active thing happening in the room. While everyone else is reacting, the silent one is processing, watching words land, watching egos inflate, watching the moment for what it really is instead of what it's pretending to be. They're not absent. They're the only ones still thinking clearly. Nobody starts out this way. Most silent people were once the ones who fought for every word to be heard, who explained themselves twice, 3 times, hoping clarity would finally land, who raised their voice because they thought volume was the same thing as being understood, and slowly, argument after argument, they learned something exhausting. Some people don't want resolution. They want a witness to their storm, someone to absorb it, someone to fight back so the chaos has somewhere to go. Once you understand that, raising your own voice stops feeling like strength. It starts feeling like adding gasoline to a fire that was never yours to put out in the first place. There's real psychology behind this shift. When conflict escalates, the nervous system floods with cortisol and adrenaline, the body preparing to fight, flee, or freeze, exactly as it would in the face of any threat. Most people fight. Words become weapons, tone becomes volume, and the original disagreement gets buried under everything said in the heat of it. But the silent ones have trained themselves towards something else entirely. A conscious pause between provocation and response. Not freezing out of fear, but stillness chosen on purpose again and again until it becomes instinct. That gap, the half second between what was said and what they choose to do about it, is where their power actually lives. It's small, it's nearly invisible, and it changes everything. People misread this silence as coldness, or worse, as not caring enough to defend themselves. It's usually the opposite. Silent people often care so much that they refuse to let one heated moment become the whole truth of a relationship. They've learned the hard way that words said in anger don't disappear just because someone apologizes for them later. They leave a residue. So instead of adding to it, the silent one chooses to protect what matters more than the argument does. The relationship, the friendship, the version of themselves they don't want to become in the heat of the moment. This silence wasn't cheap. It was built after years of arguments that went nowhere, of being talked over, interrupted, dismissed, of realizing that matching someone's volume never once changed their mind, and often only gave them more to be angry about. What they discovered, slowly and painfully, is this: you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Restraint isn't the absence of a response. It is a response, often the most deliberate one available. Psychologists call this affect regulation, the ability to feel something fully without letting it dictate your behavior. Silent people aren't suppressing their anger, pretending it isn't there. They're metabolizing it in real time, deciding almost unconsciously what's worth saying out loud and what's better left to settle before it's spoken. That's why they're often the calmest person in a room that's on fire. And it's also why, later, alone, they might finally let out everything they held back. The tears, the frustration, the words they chose not to say to someone else's face. They've simply learned there's a time to hold it in and a time to let it out safely on their own terms. They also start to notice things other people miss entirely. Where others hear an attack, they hear fear
wearing a different mask. Where others see a fight that has to be won, they see a moment that will mean nothing in a year, maybe nothing by tomorrow. That shift in perspective is what lets them walk away from a shouting match with their dignity intact and still say, without bitterness, "This isn't the hill I need to die on." So the next time someone goes quiet in the middle of an argument, understand this. They haven't left the conversation. They haven't given up, and they haven't lost. They've simply stopped fighting on someone else's terms and started responding on their own. Because silence, in the right hands, was never empty. It was restraint with its mouth closed and its mind wide open. Strength that never needed to raise its voice to be heard.